Hello all, my name is Aidan Miller. I am a student researcher for physics here at the College of Science, and I have a personal interest in the field of artificial intelligence, or AI. Today, I'm here to talk about a big question that pertains not only to those in the field, but also to the essence of what makes us feel human. Today, I'd like you to think about if something you made could ever earn the right to be your equal. And I'll break down the three essential components of that question: the capability and purpose of AI, the impact of AI rights on humans, and what rights for AI might look like. Under capability and purpose, a great example is an imaginary friend from when you were a kid. Though you may not think so now, they felt very, very real at the time, because now you know that that friend was a part of you, a living and changing piece that you could grow and connect with. Now, the ability to create things that are more and more like us is a reality through AI, but all of these differ in ability. A calculator is different from Siri, which is different from a self-driving car, yet all of these have some ability to take in information and provide responses, the depth and autonomy of which changes based on the purpose it was designed for. According to Arind Hintz, professor of integrated biology and computer science at Michigan State, there are 4 levels to artificial intelligence that we should keep in mind. Type 1 is reactive machines, like Deep Blue, IBM's chess-playing computer. Type 2, limited memory AI, like self-driving cars who can pull information it's seen before and use that information to make decisions about the future. Type 3 is theory of mind AI, which have the ability not only to form representations of events, but also people and agencies in the world, crafting its own belief and identity, which he argues we have not created yet. And finally, type 4 is complete self-awareness, a point at which an AI is considered completely conscious in the same way that humans are. Through that same model of intelligence, we must see some comparisons to biological life we hold important all around us, such as the different rights of plant life and endangered ecosystems, the rights of our pets, and the rights for humans that every day give opportunity to those who might otherwise be limited or even abused. Even still, in hearing about the different lengths AI technology is progressing to, it may bring us back to our own self-interest, and what happens to us when AI become hard to dismiss as inanimate things. The problem has come up recently against the progression of AI rights, as was best explained when Saudi Arabia decided to give rights to an AI named Sophia, which seemed to be greater in scope than those given to human women in Saudi Arabia. When Rosina Sinai of the BBC covered this story 2 years ago, she described the people of Saudi Arabia as offended that Sophia could do such things as represent herself publicly without male accompaniment and did not need to wear the traditional coverings, both of which are required by Saudi women through the law there. Many in this camp have understandably called for this AI's rights and other potential events like these to be revoked and not repeated. However, the problem to be addressed here isn't that something man-made has rights. It's the disparity of the way that artificial intelligence and humans in Saudi Arabia are treated. This is a mistake of the government of Saudi Arabia, both in not subjecting any citizen, AI or otherwise, equally to their laws, and through not addressing the human rights concerns of their people. And it should only be hoped that this is a lesson to be learned from in the development of this type of legislation in the future. Now that we know the unique situation that AI rights seem to be in, and the complex nature of creating rights that fit well for AI, it is important to think how that might work realistically. While I'd like to say that there is a cut and dry formula, there isn't, and I don't think that that should be the goal here. I think instead AI rights, no matter what packaging they come in, should be factored in such a way, as we have seen from earlier in this talk, that they take into account human and AI sides of things. For us humans, the idea of having AI that seem to access many large and connected aspects of our societies, intelligent things that are becoming more and more dependent on, that we are becoming more and more dependent on to improve our lives, for us humans, the idea of having AI that have access to many large and connected aspects of our society, those intelligent things that we are becoming more and more dependent on to improve our lives, we feel we have to protect ourselves from, and any and every potential worry in mind, where that kind of security only comes with designing these AIs with our best rules and most generous dreams for human rights. To quote Salil Shetty of Amnesty International, "We strongly believe that enshrining AI ethics and human rights is the best way to make AI a positive force into our collective future. But we must also recognize that these very capable and increasingly human-like creations of ours hold their very existence in our hands. To use the words of an expert in the field of non-human rights, Dr. Robert C. Jones, professor of applied ethics and animal cognition at California State University, if it turns out we are creating a race, and that race is falling into the same pattern of being exploited for labor while having no rights or recognition, and they have the potential to become sentient, then we are morally culpable. If in the future AI become completely sentient, humanity is taking on the role of its creator, and in doing so we must understand the responsibility we have to ensure the best for ourselves and our creation, becoming more connected to them than divided against them. Because even though we all may not know how to do it, there are thousands of programmers and engineers out there dedicating their lives to bringing their imaginary friends into reality, and they're doing it. But they're also doing it to improve every aspect of our lives. That being the case, I don't ask you to know what our plan should be down to every detail, and I don't ask you to make this a rallying cry. I only ask that you research this topic to the best of your ability and encourage others to do the same to spark this conversation. Because whether we like it or not, the future is coming, and we need to be ready when it does. Thank you.
So we currently have 2 live viewers.
Hey guys.
So my question to you guys would be, do you have any questions for Winzlow regarding the topic at hand? Yeah.
AI rights. And I'm going to eat Chick-fil-A because how better to end the speech.
So I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to ask questions to your boy Winzlow. If nobody has any questions, then we'll just end the stream.
What did you think of it?
It's interesting that the call to action is research. The idea is look into it, spark a conversation,
Right.
begin more of a discussion.
Well, I think because otherwise, when people hear the idea of a machine, something man-made, can be equal to a human, a lot of people fall back on their initial reactions and their opinions based on culture and religion. So I would ask people not to necessarily jump to that immediate conclusion, because if I told you, hey, right now you need to decide on how you feel about AI rights, you would most generally jump back to your initial skepticisms, which I think is similar to how people reacted in other civil rights movements. I think people are worried and scared about change, but people who tend to be more researched and be more interactive with that transition and really try to inundate themselves into a new society and a new community, I think they can find a more open mind. Because if we try to create these talks and these discussions, and it immediately turns into this partisan thing, or it immediately turns into this division, all we can hope for is that by the time somebody does create one of these things, there will be some people that support it. But if we do it logically and we work on it over years and we really try and develop it as something that everyone can get behind, then when we're to emerge that we would consider sentient and equal to ourselves, we wouldn't have to worry about, is it going to be hurt? Is it going to feel scared of humans? Is it going to be angry at them? It would feel like a part of us.
I feel like a big question that I would have, since it's persuasive, there's a call to action. Why should I answer this call now rather than answer it later?
Because we have a limited time window. That's what I tried to explain in my speech. I hope I got it across well. But essentially the idea that's why I went back and said, every single day people are working on this. And every day we get closer and closer. Somebody is eventually, we don't know when, going to crack that code and going to figure it out. Not only individuals, but there are large companies that are constantly putting billions of dollars into trying to invest in new types of computing and in different AI softwares and programs to get closer and closer to that human model. And once somebody gets that, once somebody achieves that, there's no going back.
How close do you feel we are now? And what keeps someone listening to your speech from saying, well, we're not that close right now. Why should I care right now?
Because even if you consider it a publicity stunt, and that's what I tried to explain through Saudi Arabia's show of AI citizenship. Whether you think that Sophia is equal to a human or not, I personally would say I don't think so yet. I think that it was still enough of a consideration. It was a serious enough thing for a country to say citizenship, even if it was to support a company, even if it was an economic move, even if it was a political style, to still say, over continuing to develop the rights of our own people, citizenship for an artificial intelligence. And I don't think it'll be the last one. There are things that have happened in any civil rights movement that start off as an initial shot in the dark, and nobody really thinks that things are going to go past that. They think, oh, that was crazy, and then it'll die down. And then something happens a few months later, or a few years later, and then it's more intense, and then there are a few of them, and then there's a whole bunch of them, and then all of a sudden it's not something that anyone's prepared for, and it's not something that can be well adjusted into. There's a lot of backlash. What I'm saying is, let's not repeat the same mistakes. Let's not do the same things that we've done in previous times in our history where we've said, oh dang, those people, our ancestors, were wrong, and that was crazy. I don't understand how that could happen. It's because they didn't try to understand in the beginning. They didn't try to understand before it became a breaking point. And I think we shouldn't repeat the same mistakes.
I feel like that's like a more powerful message. I do feel like that in particular isn't in the speech proper.
I'll have to throw it in.
Let's see.
Also, when I do it, when we stop the stream, can you tell me how long my speech itself was?
Yeah, I go.
I would appreciate it, because that's part of the thing. Is it's supposed to be between 6 and 8 minutes, and I don't know if it's like way over or way under or whatever.
We'll see. But I definitely do feel like that should be a part of the speech. The idea of stuff like this has been an issue in the past, not in the same way, but that we don't want to look back and be like, like we could have done it better. I still feel like your speech needs something more to make people feel like they should care now. Because if the majority of people in the room are like, well, what he's talking about probably won't be a thing, like, even by the time that, like, I'm, like, older and have kids,
Right.
then, like, why should I even put, like, any thought into it at all?
And that's the whole point. Is I think what I'm trying to say is I'm not jumping up and down and saying it's happening right now. It's happening. We all need to decide on this today, because it could be 20 years. It could be 100 years. We don't know. What I do know is that you need to start talking about it earlier. Things only get worse the longer you wait to do something. In everything, but especially in things that are civil rights issues and human rights issues. Even if you're not looking at it from the point of AI rights, even if you're not concerned about the machines at all, even the idea of creating something that is incredibly intelligent and incredibly capable and giving it access to a lot of information and a lot of resources from humanity's societies is a human rights issue. It's a human rights issue in and of itself. We're already concerned with things like data privacy and with how interconnected our society is becoming and how that infringes on human rights. If you're worried about somebody across the world hacking into your computer and potentially stealing your bank account info, if there's a large sentient AI that's in control of the world's bank account information, that would be a different story. If someone hacked into that, and if someone manipulated that, it would be a bigger problem.
I feel like something that I would want, if you were interested in, you to, like, bring up,
Right.
is the idea that we're starting to make moves to try and make it where machines and AI do, like, at least attempt to emulate what it is to feel. You know what I mean? The idea that we're trying to make machines be able to tell the difference between pleasure and pain and understand natural language and to be able to react in different ways to different things. Whether or not it's like the same as a person, or anywhere near what it's like as a person, the idea that that technology is out there, that that technology is fairly accessible, and that the technology is being pushed toward industries that specifically could use that in like malicious ways because there aren't any restrictions against it, it makes it, at least in my opinion, more of a like this does seem like something that like should be talked about more now.
I agree. And I would like to include that. My one difficulty is I felt like that's where I was going to use your sources a lot, your source a lot, and put that throughout my paper. But I think the problem now is with the way that I had my speech set up, I'd have to add in another source, and then I'd have to explain their part of it. And the thing that I would worry about there is that one, I would go way over, and secondly, I'd have to add a whole nother like point to it because we're supposed to have like 3 main points, no more, no less. So then I have to like add a point in and figure out how to put it into one of those other 3 points, or find a way to change that point into like a larger thing that's different. I worry about editing my speech so close to time. If I end up having a whole nother week to do it, I can rewrite parts of the speech and change it.
Just as a review, what are your 3 main points currently?
Currently, they are capability and purpose of AI, impact on humans, and AI rates.
I suppose it's interesting. The first 2, I guess, are really interesting. How do you feel like the first 2 set up your persuasive argument?
In the first one, what I was trying to show is that when people think of machines, specifically computers, they think of them all relatively the same. What's the difference between my TV and my phone and my calculator and my chatbot and my self-driving car or whatever? What are the differences between those things? To someone who may not be more versed with the field, or what's that and then like the DARPA robots and stuff like that. Those people may say, oh well, there's really nothing different between this thing. The problem with that is that there's a lot of difference, and that's why I'm trying to make a comparison to biological life, is to say that you wouldn't say that things like plants and animals and humans all are exactly the same. They have similar components, just like these AI and these computers have different components. But each of these things, even in the lowest form, even in like plant life and cellular life, still have some rights, still have some legal codes within our laws that protect them if things go too far. And as things get more intelligent, as things get more complex, we have stricter and stricter laws. And I think that's where I'm trying to make that comparison, is that your calculator may not be that big of an issue, but the difference between a self-driving car and Siri, there's a bigger difference there. They're doing different things. Going from that to something that's sentient is an even bigger jump. And we need to have rules and regulations in place to protect and control those things, because if your self-driving car is in control of the lives of other people, that's incredibly important. And so there has to be some way to deal with that legally, even though it wouldn't be the same as, say, if you were driving, necessarily.
And then how does the second point go toward your persuasive argument?
The second point is the impact on humans, which I tried to break down by explaining. Okay, well, that's showing, our first point is showing how the different types of AI are, how we can connect them to things that we're familiar with, like biological life, and why it's so important that we're able to make those distinctions and understand that these things are different and that they're increasing complexities, and they're continuing to increase. The second point is, okay, well, so what? it shouldn't be too hard to just like categorize these things and then slap labels on them and then put the laws out there based on what they are, because they're just machines, right? Well, that has an impact on human rights. If you just do that like Saudi Arabia did and slap a label and say you're a citizen, then people go, oh, well, if they're really a citizen, why don't they, she looks female, why doesn't she have to wear traditional coverings? Why doesn't she have to be represented by a man in public? Why was she able to speak on a podium by herself? When women in Saudi Arabia, who have lived in Saudi Arabia their entire lives, don't have that same privilege. So then do you think she really is a human, or are you just doing this for a publicity stunt? Either way, it's incredibly offensive and detrimental to the rights of people in your country when you just hand wave it like that.
I think the Saudi Arabia point is weird. I guess the reason why I say that is because I guess I don't fully see how it connects to the persuasive argument. You're saying it's weird that they did it the way that they did because of the fact that it seemed very like hand-wavy, and that it wasn't necessarily for the point of giving like rights to an AI for like a real purpose. It was more that it ended up offending a lot of people. But what does that have to do
With
the call to action? Like, why based on that is it like, oh, I should look into it?
So the first point is AI are increasing in complexity, essentially. There are these different types of AI, and every time we get a new type of AI, it's closer to a human life. That being in consideration, the next thing is that even if that's not a big worry for you, which it should be, another big worry is that even at this level, it affects humans. Every day, there are different human rights conflictions between how we address AI and how they interact with humans. And that's only going to become worse. There are only going to be more cases of that. So if we don't start handling those appropriately now, there won't be an easy way to in the future. If a country like Saudi Arabia, who has human rights issues called out by their own people, aren't addressing those human rights issues and then continue to push it by making strange connections to artificial intelligence without resolving those human rights issues, it only makes a more strenuous situation, both for those on the side of AI rights and for those just living in the country. So those situations are only going to increase and compile and become more intense as time goes on. What if it's not Sophia, the little equivalent chatbot thing that they gave human rights that looks like a human? What if instead it's a large banking supercomputer that they say, oh, this thing interacts with people and it talks and it controls this bank that runs a lot of economic reserves for different countries, and oh, it's pissed off now. Oh, there's no protocol in place for that. There's no reasonable design for how it should work in different countries and how it should be effective and how the system should be interlinked and be able to interact with humans. Are there more rights for humans than for this? Is this thing put into a special category? Where does the line draw between what's better for the AI as it controls this large reserve versus what's better for the humans who are interacting with it? It's to point out that, one, you have these differences. Two, these differences affect people in a major way. And then three, those effects on people and the different types are things that we absolutely have to start creating into laws, because as this gets worse, as these versions progress, not only does it affect us more, but it also makes it a more complex situation. So far going to the point that in the future, once this has all been hashed out, we may have been able to avoid a lot of potential negatives and a lot of potential historical disasters that will come up if we don't. And civil rights disasters.
So right now, my persuasive point is I feel like talking about like the current technology and how we're trying to emulate the emotions, I feel like is a stronger selling point than the Saudi Arabia point.
Sure. I'd still have to go on.
Right. I'm saying that you have to like, if you were to incorporate it, I do understand that you'd have to change a lot. But I just feel like the comparison between the two, I just feel like are really different.
I agree, but also, it's very different to say. Here's this thing that people may have heard of before, and it's that was sort of international news and affects things that people really know about. And this is the issue with that, because I don't know that most people know in depth how sophisticated or unsophisticated Sophia is. All they know is that an AI of some sort was given human rights, was given rights as a citizen in Saudi Arabia, which infringed on the rights of humans in Saudi Arabia. If I were to just say, there are these machines that are being taught emotion and that are being affected, but they aren't in wide circulation yet, and they aren't in large development yet, besides what you're working on, besides bits and pieces. It would be, I think, a harder argument to make and also to show the other side. I need to be able to say, not only is this my side, but also here's the side of the opposing side, and here's why you should choose my side.
So, when it comes to it being like a harder argument because people aren't as aware of it, I feel like I feel like a lack of awareness on the topic. You brought up multiple times, like it was international news or something that people may have heard of, even if they don't know all the details, they can still like kind of get the gist. I feel like a lot of times within like a big speech, when someone's talking about like here's a call to action. The call to action is important because it has like an impact that will only become like an increasing impact in the future, is to talk about something that like is like a snowball effect thing. And that's what you're trying to do with Sophia, is that like this is the first of what will lead into many things and grow into like a bigger problem. But what I'm saying is that I feel like the EPU XOLI stuff is also a snowball effect thing, but has bigger implications. Like if the Sophia thing was like, this is the first one, and they're also actively just trying to make more Sophias, and it's like a huge thing, and they're trying to sell them to a whole bunch of different companies.
That's what I'm describing through this whole thing. It's like there are constantly programmers and engineers working on other things like this. If you care to do, there's just a lot of it. It's not just this one.
But I'm saying that like the Sophia thing, for one, it comes down to like with yours, why should I in the audience feel like AI need rights? Why do I feel like they need any rights? Especially with the Saudi Arabia thing. It's like you look at it and you go like, well, it seems like they just could have not done that. It seems like the issue is that they gave it rights.
But that's what I'm trying to address as well. It's not just that they gave it rights, because that's why I'm trying to do the counter argument. Women in Saudi Arabia, not just women, people in Saudi Arabia said, that's wrong, strip its rights, and also don't do that shit again. That's disrespectful. To which I'm saying, that's not the problem. The problem is not that they gave it rights, the problem is that they didn't first address the human rights that they were dealing with in the first place, and then put in reasonable and equal rights. If they're going to make it a citizen, like a human is a citizen, that's what you need to do. It shouldn't be a problem of, oh, why did we give this thing rights? Because eventually, as we show with the impact, as we show with the change in different types of intelligences, eventually it will not be a case of, do we need to? It'll be a case of, this is impacting everyone on the earth all the time, every day. And any slip in those rules, any unconfirmed territory will be disastrous, that other governments and other countries will start doing things. And if we don't have consensus on how you do those things and how you approach those things, it will have effects on every other country and every other citizen of the world, regardless of whether they're in that country or whether they agree or disagree with the way that that country handled things. If I start up a robot that has access to the internet and that at any point can fuck with anybody's anything, because it's a supercomputer, and is able to like break through encryptions easily and able to do all this stuff. It's like this crazy quantum supercomputer thing. It wouldn't particularly matter if people agree with how I'm dealing with it or not. It would be that there needs to be something done. That I can't be the only person who gets to decide how this works. The computer can't be the only thing that's in check of itself.
So my thing is that with the Sophia argument,
Right.
I understand that it's like the snowball thing, and that you have the analogy where you'll be like, it's this AI that controls like banking, or it's this AI that can like go into a whole bunch of stuff, like the simulated one. I see that there are messages in the live chat. Luffy said, Nani? He said, the stream seems much more refined than last time. A long time ago, you were streaming with Winzlow, and then it said high as fuck. Then Ryan said, Jet, did you read the Nation States issue? I have not read the Nation States issue yet. Also, I guess it'll probably have more of a refined feel, because right now I feel like it's more or less like a debate. So I can see where you're coming from on that. Also, I think it's an interesting perspective for you guys, the like across the way from the couch view. And then Ryan said, it's literally about AI rights. I know. So my current thing, Winslow, is that I understand that the Sophia case like has its place. But the reason why I think the EPU thing feels like a much bigger thing in comparison to the Sophia case is that while the technology isn't everywhere right now, it's a company that's like mass manufacturing this technology, and each time they like drop like a new version of it, the previous version gets like way cheaper, and they're marketing it to industries where they're like, please use our tech, please have these like emulated emotions inside your machines, inside your like video game characters, put them in these like situations.
How much has that happened so far?
It's a thing that we're moving closer and closer towards.
Agreed, but this is a thing that we're moving closer and closer towards, and a country already like declared a bit, like it's already been international news.
It was like one AI.
But
like,
that's
I
my
know.
whole debate, is
But
that
my
it's one
thing-
thing right now.
I know, but I just feel like that one, it doesn't feel like it has a straight up predictable follow.
But if I say, there are people who are trying to develop AI that think and feel and stuff, which I already described in the different types of AI. I don't go into much more detail than that. And there's a specific company that's trying to make these EPUs that do all this stuff and have these specific like emotional states and all these things. And I have to go through and explain that to everybody. And then I say, and we could put those in things, and that would be crazy, wouldn't it? And they're coming out with new stuff, and that would be crazy, wouldn't it? They'd say,
Give CJ. We're doing a debate.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm reading a speech.
Oh.
Yeah. They would say, well, why? I don't think that that's anything like human emotions. I just don't. I can just say I don't think that, and that's fine, and that's enough of an argument. Is you can't prove that to me.
I honestly don't think that's enough of an argument. Even if it's nothing like human emotions, if from the perspective of a character in a video game with the AI, or from the perspective of the machine with the
But I
thing,
have to try and convince them that that is the case, because they could say, like Siri has emotions, and then you'd say, not like Siri has emotions, because Siri doesn't have emotions. Siri has designed responses, and so then they'd be like, so what's the difference? That thing has designed responses based on this algorithm, but it's an algorithm, so it's a different thing, and it gets to kind of choose its own stuff. That just takes a lot of time to speak. When instead I could just say, human rights issue. This was a human rights issue, and it's not going to be the only one, and I don't have to describe the specific ways that AI are going to develop to still say that there are just lots of different ones, because it's not just the emo shape thing. There's also like stuff that DARPA's doing, and also that IBM's doing, and they're all different things, and how much driverless cars are coming into a thing, and all those things are developing differently, and they're all important. They're all going to affect life in different ways.
but I feel like your argument is not as much about AI rights as much as you're like, there should be laws that exist concerning AI.
Which are AI in the same way that ecosystems have rights.
I just feel like, what kind of rights are you arguing that
That's
AI
not
need?
what I'm trying
I
to
know,
argue.
you're like, they just need some kind of like law, they just need
Yes.
some kind of regulation. I see where you're coming from.
Because
You're
if
like,
I
my
say-
scope is different.
If I say, this is the thing we need to, it just divides the audience immediately. If I say, this is the thing you should believe, AI need this right, they'd say, what about this case? And what about that? I just don't believe that. What about my religion? I just don't believe that that should be the case. If I just say, we need to talk about it, we aren't talking about it, we need to talk about it, and eventually it's going to be to the point where regardless of what your beliefs are, things are going to be happening. So there needs to be some kind of rules in place. I'm not trying to tell you exactly what you need to believe those rules are. I'm just saying you need to start talking to people about it, because otherwise your side of the argument won't get thrown into the equation, and it'll be way different from what you want.
Couldn't someone in the audience, in the same way that you're like, they could just shut down the other thing, they could be like, I just don't think that's true. I don't think it'll get to that point. I don't think we need to talk about it. And that'd be, like, I just
And
feel like
all I would
anyone
say
can
is-
shut down an argument.
And I'd say, show me examples that it's not. Because I'm showing you examples that it is. I'm showing you where companies and human rights organizations and ethicists and people who are in the field, not only who are in the field making these, but also who are people who are human rights activists who go all over the world and see all this stuff happening, and people who are actively covering news on these things, saying, this is happening, having direct quotes of people saying, this is happening, I am this and this expert, this is happening, I am a researcher of biological and computer science, this is happening, I am one of the lead people in Amnesty International, a human rights organization, this is happening, I'm from the BBC and I covered Saudi Arabia's human rights issues, this is happening, I'm from I'm a philosopher from the California State University who works specifically on this issue, and I'm telling you we need to do something about it because it's going to become a civil rights issue for AI and for humans. So I'm getting all these experts saying this is happening. I'm showing you effects around the world of this is happening. And then if you were just like, no it's not, that's like someone could show you math and say this is math, and you could say no it's not. And you can do that, that doesn't make you right.
Agreed, but I still don't feel like, because your response to the EPU thing is like, they can just shut down the idea that like, it's just nothing like us. And then it's
Because
like,
I
what's
have no
your
proof.
evidence for that it's not anything
Because
like
I
us?
don't-
And why is that what matters?
Because the only credible evidence that I would have is, there's this one company who's doing this one thing, and I'm highlighting this, when my whole subject, my whole topic is out here. And then I'd go, and then this one specific thing, back out.
You're doing that with Saudi Arabia, is what I'm saying.
But what I'm
Saudi
saying
Arabia,
is Saudi
I think,
Arabia
has,
is
it's
a
a much smaller
worldwide issue.
snowball.
But it's a worldwide issue.
So,
It's not a small snowball.
to me,
If
it's a
country-
small ass
If a
snowball.
nation comes out and does a thing, if a nation says, this person is a citizen, we're executing this person, this group is being created, this thing is being established, it's international news. Nobody thinks it's a small thing because there's an entire group of people, an entire nation of people around the world saying, we're doing this and we recognize this and it's gonna happen no matter what.
What if Sophia was Steven and it was like a male animatronic body for the AI?
I feel like there would still be other issues, but even still,
There still would be other issues.
and it'd still
but
be international news that they made
an AI citizen.
a citizen.
But my thing is that a lot of the issue with the Sophia thing is that there are people in Saudi Arabia who have like less rights than the AI. Why would a lot of people care? Why would a lot of people care? Like from like the persuasive speech thing. You could be like, they could do that right now in like America. And just make it where like self-driving cars have like more rights than people or whatever. And then be like, wouldn't that be crazy? And it's like, who's getting hurt by it? Who's getting hurt by it who's not already hurt regardless of that addition? The addition feels like a pinch.
What if there's what if there's a line of self-driving cars that come out, like you said, and the whole thing is like, oh, so we produced 8 million of these self-driving cars. Isn't that crazy? Oh, and we also have things that allow people to like use the self-driving cars or whatever in cars that aren't self-driving normally, so they can like adapt them. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, some of these are broken, and we don't know which ones it is. And we already designed the laws that a computer can't get in trouble for killing someone, and the human who's not driving can't get in trouble for killing someone. So this thing is designed to specifically target humans on the road and run them over. Oh no, it has more rights than you. They're killing. We can't just stop people from using it because we can say no self-driving cars allowed on the road, and people would be like, that's all I have. There's a lot of people now who just that's all we have.
I feel like mechanics would be like, ding ding, we can remove the thing that adapts your normal car to a self-driving car because more likely you have that than a new self-driving car. And even if you have a new self-driving car, I imagine you spent money on it because you had enough income to do so.
Agree.
You probably
But
get a
there's still
refund
a lot of
because there's a
people
huge
who die.
problem.
And then
People
you'd be
don't
like,
understand.
why? Right. And so then
Right.
people would be like, why did you let manufacturers design things in such a way that the AI don't have to be held accountable, and the companies aren't held accountable for the AI killing people? Oh, because we designed the laws that way. Oh, well, people should have like voted on different laws and like worked on different things. Oh, but nobody thought about it because it didn't matter to them.
But Sophia, I feel like is so far removed from, because to me the EPU stuff feels like a very close reality, where I feel like the Sophia
But
thing.
you're biased in it. Right? What I'm saying is you're specifically working in that field.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is there are people in my class who have never heard of any of that
Mhm.
on any front, have never heard of any of this.
Right.
But if I can say a country said this versus there's a company that's working on some stuff.
You could be like, have you ever played like Grand Theft Auto, or seen someone play Grand Theft Auto, or ever heard of Grand Theft Auto? Even if you haven't, imagine a game where you can just walk down the street
But
and you can just
say-
punch a grandma, right? Just
Punch
right in
a
her
grandma.
fucking face. Just knock her to the fucking
You can
ground.
do a Caleb City skit.
Right. Just wherever you want. Now, imagine if we're like taking that grandma, right? And she's not just like a random NPC who walks around the city and just exists there to get punched. We're also trying to like, as close as possible, emulate emotional states into that like grandma.
But then it'd
To
be like,
where-
how are you?
I don't think people are gonna dig that deep. If people aren't raising their hand and going, what the fuck does Sophia do? How does Sophia work? Like, I don't think that's like the reaction of like a speech class. And I don't feel like Sophia is a strong enough call to action because I don't think it explains enough to the audience why it's important. I feel like it's really easy to explain, we can just do that currently. And even if it's not on the same level as a person, I'm not even arguing this at the same level as a person. The fact that punching that grandma could have an effect on the grandma where she's like, I feel negatively about this and I would prefer not for this to happen. I think that in itself is like an issue, and they shouldn't be put in situations where they're just in like sandboxes where the player can just like fuck them over. And it's something that we can do now.
But I could make the argument that, oh, so those EPUs that are in that sandbox, at any point I can turn them off, and they don't have an effect on humans. And humans aren't affected by that at all. But, so it sucks that that thing feels bad, but okay. It's worse if that same thing is a real walking, living, interactive thing with other people, and if I punch it, it can get mad and say, all right, and then leave, and then get a gun and start killing people. And it'd be hard to stop because it's a large metal machine.
So I feel like the idea of upping the ante by being like, man, it's one-sided so it's okay, is kind of shitty. Like to be like, oh man, you pissed off a grandma in Grand Theft Auto.
What I'm saying is I'm
Ooh,
trying
you know,
to connect
like-
to people who have never thought about these ideas before as just the going in point. everybody may have thought of these ideas. I don't know. But what I am saying is that it's a lot easier to sell an audience on. It's a lot harder to sell an audience on. There's a thing in a video game that would feel sad if you did some stuff to it, versus because some people would just be like, that sounds awesome. Like I want all my video game characters to feel fucking sad when I shoot. That makes it really realistic. Versus
That's why it's so important for us to not promote that.
right. But if I just tell you that, then people may just think that to themselves either way and be like, oh, okay.
But
if
in
I
this
say,
speech, you should be like, but that's shitty. That's the. I feel like that makes sense.
but that's not what I'm trying to do. What
I
I'm saying
know
is,
that's not your goal.
hey, if we end up continuing down this path, Terminator. Like, shit can just come in your house and kill you. There could be a robot that's designed to, like, save your grandmother's life if she has a heart attack. And you could come in, and it could have fucking killed her, and it could kill you, and it could walk down the street and start killing people.
You know what's like a more realistic and like possibly like in the near future thing? We don't have regulations on how like emotional processing units work.
What do you
Oh,
say that's a
they're
less realistic thing? There, in
Well, hold on,
Japan
hold on,
right
hold
now,
on.
there are robots that just do that.
I'm saying like you just put in a already existing life support system to keep your grandma alive. Oh, you made it upset. Oh, it just kills your grandma.
Why would you need the life support system to...
A Terminator robot, right? Why does that need emotion?
Because it needs to be able to recognize and see and understand pain.
But it itself doesn't need to feel emotion. You can just have something that can like
If it's going to
look
connect
at
to a
other
person who may be
things.
senile, maybe. Because if it's just like, oh, okay, all right, doing this thing now, that person may not feel a connection to it and may not ever reach out for it if they need it. But if they feel like it's a friend, they might.
A lot of pre-existing robots already are like, I just say what I think is best, in the tone that I think is best, but doesn't necessarily itself try to emulate emotional states on the level of, I'm like thinking about something.
And that doesn't necessarily help people in specific situations.
I feel like the grandma can't really tell the difference between the two things.
Okay, what if it's a teenager? Hey, I'm trying to kill myself and no one's home except this robot. Oh, inputted response. Oh, I'm smarter than that. Okay, that's just a response you're given. That's just what you like would say. Okay, cool, still gonna do it. What if it gave a response that she never would have expected? It's like, no, I really fucking like, I get it. Like, here's whole other shit.
But you could also just program that.
What if you programmed it? Well,
Because you can just have an AI that like, I'm trying to find things that like make sense and build
but
like
if
realistic
that person is trying to
systems,
say,
like
prove it to
sentences.
me that you're real and that I might consider not doing it, they'd be like, but
You still could probably do it. Because the thing about it, right, is that the AI feeling emotions doesn't suddenly make it better at doing a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a better
it be-
empathy.
I see what you mean by like empathy, but like where we're currently at when it comes to like the EPU stuff, sure it can feel like complex emotional states, right? But just because it feels complex emotional states, that's not the thing that like the EPU itself doesn't make it better at forming sentences. It can help if you have a thing already that forms sentences and you put it in to like boost it. But it itself doesn't give it the ability to just say really complex and human things. That has to do with like setting up like neural networks or setting up like machine learning where it can like look at different like sentences that real people have said and then try to come up with its own ideas. EPUs can help that, like make that better. I agree with that. But the grandma robot and the anti-suicide teenager robot both can just have the fucking machine learning. They don't need the EPU.
I disagree. The machine learning thing can try to identify that emotional state and can try to be like, I think that's what it's like when they're sad. In the similar way that the Xbox Kinect can be like, I think that's what it looks like when you're doing a jumping jack. But the Xbox Kinect was shitty at that and fucked up and got it wrong a lot of the time. So, and you'd end up having like arms over here and shit. So the thing that I'm trying to express is that just a neural network can try and say, from this data I've gathered, I think this. But if you do have the EPU thing in it, and it's constantly over like a long time, been building those like pings back and forth of like, oh, this is a thing, and this is how it made me feel, so I'm guessing this is how it made you feel, and now I'm curious about that because of the way that my emotional state is, so I'm going to look into this specific thing more, and then, oh, now I found more things about it, and oh, now I'm going to try and build up that more. And so now whenever I see something going wrong, I know how to gauge my own emotional response to that, and I can better determine what their emotional response is, because it gives me like this whole specific sector of my neural network to work with, and then I keep like breaking that down, which is a thing that could be done by just a neural network, but essentially what that neural network would be doing is the combination of the EPU and the neural network, so it'd just be like having the EPU and the neural network to begin with.
I do agree that the EPU plus it can make it better. I'm just saying that you wouldn't necessarily need an EPU in a Terminator bot. Not saying that people wouldn't put it in a Terminator bot, not saying that would make it better.
What I'm saying is anything that has it in there could turn into it.
Well, what I'm saying is that a Terminator bot just feels like such an out there thing to say,
I wouldn't
when
just
you
say-
could just say a life support system with an EPU. You could do that very easily with like
but
not
saying
having to
life
build a
support system,
Terminator.
But just the life support system thing sounds like, oh, hooked up to a bed and like the little monitors, and then they just shut off. It's like, yeah, why the fuck would you put an EPU in that?
Why put a Terminator robot?
Because if it's having to walk around and care for people,
Maybe
that's-
the life support system has a thing that lets it have conversations with people on life
it doesn't
support to
walk
try and keep
around
their
and
spirits
do
up.
other things.
It still has someone's life in its hands.
Right, but one person's life in its hands versus being able to affect the lives of many people around because it's autonomous.
Self-driving car.
Agree.
But then Exolife EPU stuff, they're wanting it in self-driving cars. Like, the reason why Sophia feels small is because if Sophia was like a company and they're constantly
It is a
pushing
company.
it and they're making more shit like Sophia
Yes.
and trying to
Hanson
make them
Robotics.
citizens.
Yes, Hanson Robotics.
Hit me up with more info.
Hong Kong-based company, I'm pretty sure.
So what I want to know is how like the citizenship issue is being pushed further by Hanson Robotics, because I feel like the Sophia case, the way it's presented in the speech, it doesn't have like the same level of depth that it could. I just feel like if you use the EPU thing, you feel like it's getting cheaper by the year. They keep releasing more. The cheaper it gets, and the more they
Hanson
market it
Robotics
to.
is an AI and robotics company dedicated to creating empathetic, living, intelligent machines that enrich our lives. Robots will soon be everywhere. How can we nurture them to be our friends and useful collaborators? Robots with good aesthetic design, rich personalities, and social cognitive intelligence can potentially connect deeply and meaningfully with humans. Hanson AI develops cognitive architecture and AI-based tools that enable our robots to simulate human personalities, have meaningful interactions with people, and evolve from those interactions. Our team of renowned AI scientists conducts advanced research to build the most compelling robotics and AI platform for research, media, and service applications.
How much do they sell their robots for currently? Because I feel like that's also like a big factor.
I think it's probably incredibly expensive because they don't just like, here's the price, like here it is.
Right. It's probably a thing where it's like contact us.
Yes.
You then would like order directly, and it probably would be like a good amount of money. And it's not a thing where like within the next couple years it could be really widespread, which is why it feels like the smaller snowball. The EPU thing, they keep dropping new EPUs regularly, and every time they drop a new EPU, it cuts the price in half of the previous stuff that used it. So soon, the EPU2 that's in the Exolife is going to be really inexpensive, and they're going to be marketing it toward gaming companies to be like, hey, use our shit. And is the more, like the cheaper it gets, and the more people who have like a demand for it in their gaming technology, who like get it, the more it can be in like everyday gaming experiences, which will put it more in your face, and it will be a thing sooner.
But what
It
if
just
what
is
if
the
they're
biggest
just
move.
not the only thing doing that?
But they're like the thing that's getting there like really quick and why it needs to be like urgent. And if they're there, assuredly there are other people there and other people working on it.
And other
But I
people
just feel
potentially
like
significantly beyond it.
possibly.
Like, what if the whole thing is like, big company creates really, really advanced thing. Oh, okay, I'm gonna give it to other big company.
Right, and then they like try and work on something maybe behind the scenes.
Right.
The EPU thing is transparent enough for you to be able to like discuss it and talk about how it's like continually building and getting closer to that point,
But then
and
it's
show how it's hitting the
and
consumer
then I gotta
directly.
like divide down and go really far down
You
into this
don't.
rabbit hole.
You
Yes.
don't, because the GTA thing is good enough. It's good enough to be like, wouldn't it suck if some nigga came down the street and punched you in the face? Imagine NPC nigga who like emulates the emotion and
that's
gets
the
punched
only
in the
thing,
face.
and then you can turn off the Xbox, and then that's it.
But that still is shitty for the thing.
Sure, but that's not a human rights issue.
But it's not a human rights discussion.
That's what it is. My whole thing is, this affects you. You need to do it, because this affects you.
But I feel like
And it
that's
changes
the
what we
worst
think.
way to discuss it.
I disagree. I think that's the best way to do
Because I feel like it shouldn't be a selfish, it affects you
it.
thing.
That's what humans
It
do.
should be a like,
Humans
this affects them thing.
Humans think, how does this affect me? Before, like during any civil rights issue, the people who had power were like, why do I give a shit?
But that's why that's the shitty way to go about it.
Which is why I'm saying, this is the thing that affects you, so start thinking about what affects you.
I'm like, fuck it affecting you, it affects it.
But what I'm saying is, even to this day, that's not a thing that you can change in human personality.
Well, I'm like, just empathize. Like, that's the thing.
That's what I'm saying.
No. Don't empathize with, like, yourself. Empathize with
Start
the thingy.
with the reason that it affects you to get you to give a shit about empathizing about it. If I
Just
just said
put
empathize,
yourself in that situation and then understand that it's shitty,
But then
and then be like,
but
it's
then
shitty
all
for
I
it.
have to say, that's been an argument that's been happening for many civil rights debates. Women don't need the same jobs as men because women couldn't do the same jobs as men. If I was a woman, I wouldn't care about needing the same because it doesn't. That's a terrible way to look at it. But people can just
Video
make those
game characters don't need the right to not be mistreated. Because if I was a video game character, you could turn me off. And it's like, what? It's like, that's so fucking
No, because
weird.
they would think it's not the same. So if I was a video game character, I wouldn't know.
Women aren't the same. Like, you could just say what you want,
And it's right.
but yeah.
But that's why I'm saying, if you don't have a
But
way
you
to
can just,
prove
the same
here's
way
the same
that
thing
you're
as
like, here are these people talking about it. Here are these people talking about it. I feel like a lot of the people
Because-
talking about it aren't talking about the Sophia thing as hard.
But part of
because
the
it's
reason
not the
that
big
like
part of it.
shit in civil rights debates have gotten so progressive is in part because the people in power were scared they were going to get the shit kicked out of them. But you can't feel like the shit's going to get kicked out of you if you're just like, you could turn it off. Don't give a fuck.
But that's just shitty.
But it doesn't matter. I'm
I
not
feel
trying to
like-
say if it's good or bad. What I'm trying to say is this is how human history works. This is where we are right now. People still don't care unless you give them a reason to care. There's a whole like generation of memes that's just like, I don't give a fuck. That's the whole thing.
So, I still don't like that point of view. But if you, but we're so fucking
human-
close.
that's a
We're so
human
close to the thing, though. Like, I feel like the Sophia thing, really far away. I feel like the EPU thing, really close.
If you have the EPU, you just make
Put it in Sophia.
Yeah.
But Sophia's still expensive as fuck. Like, you're not gonna.
Sophia's expensive as fuck because of the proprietary technology inside. But kids here can make robots, so if you just have the EPU shit, you can build a robot for like $35 that's better than Sophia.
Because Sophia's a piece of shit.
Right.
But the thing about it is that, like, Sophia's thing is not like a thing that, like, directly hurts people other than, like, hurting their feelings.
Directly hurts the entire civil rights movement of women in Saudi Arabia.
Why can't you still fight for women's rights, even if the AI has, like,
That's
its
what
own
I'm trying
rights?
to say. But
the argument that people in Saudi Arabia would make who want Sophia's rights to be taken away is the idea of, so imagine you're working for your entire life as a woman in Saudi Arabia to try and be able to drive, to try and be able to do shit. Like, we just get the right to drive. We're just trying to like do shit like that. We're just trying to be able to represent ourselves and to be a part of the government and things like that. And then someone's like, oh, it's a cool robot. That thing's better than you.
That is shitty.
It sets you back. Because, like, imagine if you're starting to get close and then everybody just pulls a big ass joke on you. It's like the thing in Carrie where, like, oh, like, she feels like she's gonna become the prom queen. That's fucking great. Yeah, like, these nuts. It's terrible. And it feels like a big setback. So it's an actual impact on human rights. And all of these experts are like, it's bad. Like, that was a problem.
Well, are your like quotes from the experts about the Sophia thing or just about AI rights? I feel like the AI rights quotes feel more in the EPU space. They don't feel in the fucking Sophia space.
Because you're looking at it all from...
Hit me up with that quote from the philosopher and then connect me to Sophia. And I feel like I can connect you better to the EPU thing.
If it turns out we are creating a race, and that race is falling into the same pattern of being exploited for labor while having no rights or recognition, and they have the potential to become sentient, then we are morally culpable.
Okay.
So...
Okay, hit me up.
Okay.
Hit me up. How does that connect to Sophia better than the EPU thing?
Okay. So...
Use
if
like
it turns out we're creating a race, meaning a race in the same way as there are different races or groups and societies in human culture. So, if we are creating a new population in human culture and evolution, and that race is falling into the same pattern of being exploited for labor while having no rights or recognition, and they have the potential to become sentient, we are morally culpable.
Okay, hit me up. Sophia, hit me up on how that connects.
Right.
Thanks.
So Sophia is a thing that interacts with other people.
Right.
Right. It's a thing that is real. You can touch Sophia.
Right.
Right. Sophia can touch you. Sophia, if she had the strength and was designed that way, could punch you in your fucking face. So, or shoot a gun. So, the idea is, if Sophia can interact with you and impact you, if we are morally culpable, those AI that are intelligent enough can feel that harm. And they have the immediate ability to go out and interact with you. It's not a one-sided thing. It's not, oh, I can influence you and you can't influence me. It's, I'm right here in front of you and you're treating me negatively. And there are many of us, maybe eventually many more than humans. This will become a huge problem, and then people will realize it after large problems have already occurred, where people are hurt and affected, where people's kids are hurt and affected, where people's ancestors are hurt and affected.
Now note that a lot of what you just said has a lot less to do with what he's saying than the EPU thing. I say that because when he's saying we'd be morally culpable, he'd be like, that would be like a moral issue on us because we did it.
Right.
We made this thing that's like sentient and has like its own feelings.
Right.
And we have it work, we have it do stuff for us, but for whatever reason, we don't give it rights. We don't give it the respect that it deserves as its thing. I feel like it's more of the message of what that quote is saying. And that if issues arise out of that, that's our house, because we're like the ones who did it, right? And you're like, here are all these issues. Here are all these issues that could arise from it if we like put it in a physical thing and it fucked us, right? But morally culpable can just, like, it doesn't have to be a Sophia punched you. It could be like, you did a fucked up thing.
But what I'm saying is that moral culpability, that moral responsibility has an effect.
But that moral responsibility in itself is already a strong enough thing. It doesn't have to be a you get punched, self-driving cars or murdering people in the street. just the fact that you can hurt it
Right.
is a moral responsibility
Right.
thing.
But on top of that, if it's like, oh, okay, do you want $1,000 or do you want a yacht, or do you want $1,000 and a yacht? I just feel like both is better to put
One
right.
is closer than the other.
But-
Not in that grand prize
But you
fucking game show winning scenario, like analogy, but between the Sophia thing and the EPU thing that I feel like is way more around the corner. And I have evidence for it. Like you're biased, but it's like
I
just
also
look
have
at the
evidence
chain.
for- just look
The
at-
Sophia thing is not fucking around. Like that's my thing. It's like the EPU exolife stuff.
Right.
They're actively working on like the next generation of
Sophia
chip. Every
actively
time that
affected
chip
the
comes
human
out,
rights of the
it's-
entire nation.
Then they're actively marketing
Millions
the
of
chip to
people.
gaming,
Millions
playing
of
video
people,
games.
human
There's a
rights.
huge market for it.
Are you
People
saying,
are interested in
Are
the
you
thing.
saying that EPUs are more important than the rights of every person in Saudi Arabia?
No. I'm saying that I'm saying that like us worrying about how characters feel in video games once we start trying to give them feelings
Right.
is something that is a more immediate issue than androids being given citizenship. If, like, during the time of, like, from a black person, a nigga, I'm a nigga, right here, from a black person, if suddenly one dog in America was given more rights than all black people, I wouldn't give a fuck. It's one dog. I don't care about that dog. Like I don't like
No,
what
but
is
so
that?
imagine if people then started going, well, we need to start looking at every dog. We should put all these other civil rights issues on the back. Dogs. Dogs are what we want to focus on.
But that's not what's happening in Saudi Arabia. They're not like, now
That
let's
was the
look
whole
at
thing.
all
It was
of the
that-
computers.
it was that-
Is Siri now a citizen of Saudi Arabia? Alexa, Cortana, Google Home? Are they announcing all these other things? No! It was one fucking thing a few years ago.
It was at a
It
tech
doesn't
conference.
fucking
That's
matter.
The whole thing was like, we're trying to get more things.
But they're not actually doing it.
Because everyone immediately went, no.
Then it sounds like people are already like, no. It
Right.
doesn't seem like it needs a push of awareness. It doesn't seem like it needs a call to action. You
Because
know
I'm
what
not trying to call
does?
to action for that. I'm trying to say you can have the AI rights and you can have the other thing.
What do you mean you're not trying to call action to that?
I'm trying to say that that was a problem, and that the way to fix that isn't
Is
to
that it got
eliminate
fixed.
AI rights. No, the way to fix that is to increase human rights and to understand that when developing rights for AI, you have to keep human rights in mind.
So what's the call to action?
Call to action is, these are the ways we should structure our debate. Let's have this debate. Because if you just say, have the debate, then people will be like, all over the place.
What's the
I'm like,
structure that you provided through the argument?
Rights for AI need to be based around the goal of connecting and making more connected AI and humans. Because eventually we will have AI that are either equal to in intelligence and capability or surpassing humans. Therefore, we need to be as closely entangled and immersed with them as possible. And those human rights that are innately human and AI rights need to be things that are hand in hand. That you shouldn't develop AI rights as one totally separate thing, and its human rights as another totally separate thing. If an AI has rights, humans should probably have those rights, unless it doesn't make any sense. But in some case, there should be some sort of bridge. There should be some sort of reasoning there. Vice versa. If a human has rights and an AI has the same consequence and effect as humans, then those AI should probably have those rights too. If they can do the same things and have the same effect of those laws and things. Sophia, is considered a woman.
Well,
by
real
Saudi
quick,
Arabia.
before you go into an example. That's a very different thesis from the speech that you said.
No. That's
Yes.
what I was trying. No.
Hold on.
Let me
Based
read
on
you
what
the
you
quote.
just said, how does your speech reflect to that? That they need the hand-in-hand rights and that any rights that like an AI has that's specific to an AI, maybe a human shouldn't have.
If in the future AI become completely sentient, humanity is taking on the role of its creator. And in doing so, we must understand the responsibility we have to ensure the best for ourselves and our creation, becoming more connected to them than divided against them.
But you acted like the rights being equal thing between human and AI, and that the rights need to be closer, was like the whole thing you're speaking. I'm like, no,
that is
because
a
that's
bound
not.
for this discussion. I'm saying that needs to be included. The other ideas that need to be included are understanding that there are different types of AI, and anything that we put into effect is going to have an effect on human rights. So that should be the boundaries of our discussion when discussing AI rights.
Well, what's the conclusion of your, like, when you are announcing at the end your call to action, what is it that you say in the speech proper?
That being the case, I don't ask you to know what our plan should be down to every detail. I don't ask you to make this a rallying cry. I only ask that you research this topic to the best of your ability and encourage others to do the same to spark this conversation. Because whether we like it or not, the future is coming and we need to be ready when it does. Essentially, keep in mind this shit I said, and then we'll have a debate.
Well, not really. Like, the call to action sounds like, research this on your own, it'll be relevant later. Like, that seems to be like what you're trying to persuade them to do. Look into it more, because it'll be relevant later. Like, based on those last few sentences, that's the call to action of the speech. It's not necessarily to have a debate. It's not necessarily to have a discussion. It's like, research it on your own, because, as you phrase it, the future is coming.
Okay. I only ask you to research this topic to the best of your ability and keep in mind the points we've discussed in crafting this conversation. Okay. I only ask that you research this topic to the best of your ability and keep in mind the points we've discussed, encouraging others to do the same to spark this conversation. Because whether we like it or not, the future's coming and we need to be ready when it does.
I like that one less. Do you?
That's fun.
Well, because the other one was better because you were like, do your own research,
I'm
right?
still saying do your own research. I'm also saying keep these points I have in mind.
Hit me up with your new like in call to action that you wrote.
That's it. That being the case, I don't ask you to know what our plan should be done to every detail. I don't ask you to make this a rallying cry. I only ask that you research this topic to the best of your ability and keep in mind the points we've discussed, encouraging others to do the same to spark this conversation, because whether we like it or not, the future is coming and we need to be ready when it does.
Okay, there we go. The research part isn't there. Did you not say that part when you like reread it?
No, I did.
You did? I just don't remember that.
I started with, I only ask that you research this topic to the best of your ability and keep in mind the points we've discussed.
You're like, I started with that part. I don't know how I didn't remember that. That's my bad. So what exactly do you feel like they should be researching? Because I think that would be the other part of it. Like, imagine if at the end of a big conference, someone goes, and all we want you guys to do in the audience, look it up. Okay, yeah, look it up. Remember the shit we talked about and just have fun. The future's coming. Niggas would be like, look up what? We just talked about a whole bunch of, like, do you mean look up everything? What is it that I should be looking up? What should I be researching in particular? What's like the topic? What's the subject? Should I be looking up Sophia? Should I be looking up the different types of AI? Should I feel like calls to action should be a little more specific. When YouTubers are like, hit that like button and subscribe, it's like, that's very clear. If I was like, look up YouTube analytics, that's actually very clear. But just research more is so blank when it's too general compared to like what you have said. I feel like there must be like some kind of real mission that you want them to do.
I only ask that you keep up with AI development to the best of your ability. Keep in mind the points we've discussed, encouraging others to do the same to spark this conversation. Because whether we like it or not, the future is coming. We need to be ready when it does.
I think AI development is a little too vague. I only say that because of the fact that you also are like, this is a human rights issue. Like, based on the scope of your paper, it seems like you'd want to be like, AI development and like recent news, not even recent news, but just like developments in like human rights concerns or like human rights debates or human rights laws, keep up to date on like changes in human rights or like changes in rights in general. Because to me, Sophia's not a human rights thing.
But it's all
It's not though. It's
it is.
it's like,
You can say that it's not, but it is.
but you can just put it in its own box and it still would be fine. Like if that chair had more rights than you, Aiden,
Right.
would you be like,
That's a human rights issue. Yes.
it doesn't have to be?
Yes. What do you mean it doesn't have to be? If you're saying compare these rights to these rights, is this a rights issue? Yes.
But I'm like, what is the actual consequence of that chair having more rights?
The fact that I don't have the maximum amount of rights that I can have. That I am restricted and constrained by a roof that is dependent on me being below this chair.
But
So if all of a sudden, this chair can't do taxes, fuck, no, I can't do my tax, oh, I'm gonna go to jail because I didn't do my tax, but I can't do my taxes because this chair can't do his taxes because it doesn't have fucking arms.
the chair has the right to kill you,
Right.
but you don't. How do you feel?
That.
Why?
If someone attacks me, this chair can kill, but the chair can't fucking kill him.
But the person attacking you also doesn't have like this right to kill.
Right, but they can break the, but if I try and defend myself, I'm breaking the law, because if I kill them, the chair has more rights than me. If the chair were to defend itself and
If the
survive,
chair were to defend
and survive, if the attacker comes and trips over the chair and dies, people are gonna be like, the chair has
chair
a
was
right.
within his range.
But if I do that and I like barely survive, then they're like, murderer, take his ass to jail. He wasn't a chair.
Does Sophia have like an income?
No,
How does she buy things to like cover herself?
they put it on.
I don't know, like, I just feel like the rights discrepancy between Sophia can't do shit, bitch, android, and people, it doesn't matter if it has more rights, it can't do anything with those rights.
Because they're describing it as equal to you. If I said, this chair is a human, like you are a human, and this chair gets all these rights besides you. What if I was like, I'm gonna give this chair $1,000 a month?
Good luck, chair, spending
I'm
your
gonna take
$1,000.
your taxes and
Give
just
it
yours
to-
directly
just
and give it
specifically
to the chair. And you're like, what if I could just keep the fuck you chair?
Is that what's happening in Saudi Arabia? Are people's money being taken and just thrown at Sophia?
Yes.
They're taking people's, hit me a house up.
Government formed by income from the people.
From Hampton. Oh, well, no,
From
you
the
mean
people
taxes.
of Saudi
You're saying the
Arabia.
government with taxes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Tax money.
So the government is funded by those people.
Right.
Those people are like, we want more rights. The government's like, shut the fuck up. Rights.
That's not a direct money transfer.
It's not. It's
It's
spending
not.
money to not follow the will of your people.
I just feel like that's not even like a big expenditure to be like. If anything, I think they probably made money through Hanson Robotics as like a sponsored thing.
It's not about the money.
But you tried to make a money-based analogy.
I try to make a money-based analogy because they're spending your money doing shit you don't want.
I don't really think they lost money from that.
It's not about losing money. It's about taking your money and burning it in front of your face and being like,
But they're not.
I'm doing it because I
They're
don't give a
keeping
fuck
it.
about you. Because the whole point of the government is people.
And now Sophia.
Right. And they're like, we didn't want Sophia.
Sophia can't vote. Can she vote?
She's a sit. Well, nobody can vote because it's a principality.
This is just a totally different type of government.
Right.
What did she get out of it? What can she actually do with any of the things?
Whatever the fuck she wants, apparently.
But she can't do anything, so it doesn't fucking matter.
Well, yeah, because Hanson Robotics could be like, program her to do shit. Now, because we have this company has Saudi Arabian citizenship through this autonomous thing.
It's not autonomous.
The
'Cause
fuck yes it is.
Sophia does things on her own.
Through programming.
Right. Do you feel like Sophia has like a legitimate chatbot, or do you think people type things for her, like in the moment?
A mix of both.
A
I
mix
think
of
she could probably handle like up to here conversation, and then when someone's
up to
like,
here.
Oh,
She'd
right,
be
and-
confused as soon as I said punching her grandma.
that's what I'm saying. But then anytime somebody from the audience is like, thing to specifically try and throw you off, and then someone's like,
In the back.
yeah,
See, Sophia, it doesn't like if Sophia was way more advanced.
right, she could punch your grandma.
I mean, not even like just if Sophia could walk,
Can
walk.
walk.
What? Your boy's like, I have to show you some shit. Like, it doesn't matter that she can walk around without wrappings on, because she's a robot. She's not a she. She's not like a. She can. Does she identify? I guess she uses female pronouns. It doesn't. At that point. Let me see it. No volume, please.
Turn it up loud as fuck all the time.
Let's see, scrolling down. So Ryan's posting stuff about April 10th. Just a whole bunch of stuff about April 10th.
Shit, you don't even understand. Shit, you don't even. Like,
Is she walking or is she
Yeah.
not walking? Show me the
She's
thing.
walking.
Hand me the thing.
autonomously.
Show
Are you
me.
ready? I don't think you're ready. Thug walk.
She walks like a fucking duck.
Yeah. And now she has Saudi Arabian citizenship.
So hold on.
Thug walk. Hey.
As a part of her
thug
rights,
walk.
she can't take advantage of the rights. If
Yeah,
someone
look
came,
at those arms.
hold on. If someone came up to Sophia and was like, me, like just fucking, just started beating the shit out of Sophia,
They'd be arrested.
if they got caught,
Assault.
can Sophia rat on a nigga?
Yes.
If the police were like, who attacked you?
You know why?
How? No. How does she do it? Who attacked? Describe them to me, Sophia.
Got you. Hey, company that has a vested interest in me constantly monitoring everything
Yeah,
I
the
do.
camera feed or whatever.
Well, no, not even. It's just like a million.
There's just a nigga there, and
They
he's
just
like,
follow her around.
I saw that it was a dreadhead looking
They're just like, she's a valuable asset. You're not just gonna let her fucking.
Sophia is still so far away compared to
So
the
far away.
EPU shit.
Right here.
But she's the only one.
Plug wall. Get the plug wall.
The plug wall.
Plug wall. Hey.
The EPU thing, I think, is just really close.
Because you're biased.
It's not bias. It's
not
knowledge that
biased.
you also
You're
have.
not working for the thing. And I disagree. And
What
you're
do
like,
you
why
mean
do you
you
disagree? Because
You-
I disagree. I think the Sophia thing is closer.
How?
It's a larger company putting more money into it constantly.
Can you buy one? Can anyone buy one?
It's not a commercial thing.
Ah, then it's just not as big of a deal. It really
I
isn't.
disagree.
Okay. By it being a commercial thing,
Right.
like the EPU stuff that companies can buy,
Right.
as the price goes down and the demand for that kind of technology gets higher,
Yeah.
it'll become more and more of a bigger part of consumer technology because you can license it for commercial
But if
projects.
it's not nearly as advanced, it's not as big a problem.
What do you mean not nearly as advanced? The thing about I don't give a fuck about the plug walk. Like the fact that you can like take a video game character and it like from its perspective, even if it's not on the same level as a
Does it
person,
have a
can be
perspective?
mistreated.
Can you see its perspective?
You can see the fucking graph of its emotions
I
or
can put a
whatever.
graph and say this is emotions.
There's
You can see shit moving through the circuitry
it.
and plot that on a graph and then call that graph emotions.
It understands natural language and based off of like
Because it was
interactions. Sophia is also programmed.
Agreed.
Right.
Sophia also has gotten enough credibility to be given human citizenship.
I don't think that's based off of any real credibility.
Agreed.
Right.
Besides the
Right.
company.
So, I I feel like it's much. Okay, here's a better way for me to describe it. Right. If companies who purchase the emo-shaped technology are doing so under the guise of, hey, we now have characters who, based off of the claims of emo-shape themselves, are sentient, right? It's not the video game company themselves saying it, but hey, you know, if the company I bought it from is saying it's sentient, we're putting that shit on packaging, putting that shit in advertising, you know, we now have these characters, right? But the thing is, if we're going to have characters in games who are described as being sentient characters who have their own thoughts, feelings, and emotions, I feel like there should be rules set in place for them to not be fucked over.
I'm not saying
but it
that it's
doesn't
not.
have to do with it being a human rights thing. Plug one.
Jonathan knows how Sophia walks.
That was rather accurate.
I know that. Are you talking about Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Yes.
Saudi Arabia has no fucking human rights anyways.
But able to a robot.
But that
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
it just shows how big of fucking dicks they are.
It's just a dick move. It doesn't really matter.
So are you?
They're assholes.
So if
Yeah.
I'm like, here's this
They're
little chip,
oligarchy.
right? So I'm like, here's this little chip that can do things, and I'm gonna call those things emotions. Whether or not you can prove their emotions, I'm gonna call them emotions, and I'm gonna program them to act like it's emotions. And then there's this robot that can walk around in the world and interact with people and has been given citizenship in a large, wealthy country. Which one is a more immediate impact?
The chip that's getting less and less expensive and is being marketed toward video
But
game
you
companies
can't
who are
prove
going
that
to incorporate it.
Marketed, which ones have bought it?
It's getting less expensive. I feel like they're
Who's
waiting for
bought
that
it?
price decrease.
Who's bought it though? Who's like, this is a good.
I would
Who's
argue-
bought Sophia?
I would argue that Saudi Arabia in general is a wealthy country.
Right.
It's only wealthy because of the only wealthy people there are the people who are the princes.
Right. Saudi Arabia is on board.
Oh, that's not what he said.
No, like the only people that there's, if you're a normal person in Saudi Arabia, you have no fucking rights whatsoever.
Apparently Sophia has more rights than women in Saudi
And,
Arabia.
well, yeah, like if you're a woman and you're in the Middle East in general, you have no fucking rights whatsoever. There's still an end.
Now you can drive.
Can you own the land?
Drives the land you don't know.
I mean,
Right.
there's
So
shitty
Jonathan
people.
Gibson- I agree, Jonathan Gibson.
I don't feel like he was like out of the two which was more important.
Right.
He was just saying that like
How
people in Saudi
shocking,
Arabia
how
don't have a lot of
much
rights.
did he talk about one thing versus the other? What
You
stuff
didn't really
did his
say
mom-
shit about the other thing. You were like, what if Chip Saudi Arabia? That was your whole
And this
thing.
for 5 minutes it was Saudi Arabia.
She walks like me in the morning when I wake up hungover anyway. She like,
Agreed.
and I'm like, fuck, I gotta go in here and use the bathroom. I gotta get water because I'm about to fucking die.
So yeah, I think we're all in agreement.
Ray King is just talking about the fan poll. I was supposed to go on a date today, which is why no fan poll.
You've been on Jet Island on a date.
Winzlow.
Yes.
Sophia thing ain't shit.
What are you saying?
It's because the EPU thing is becoming more affordable to the
How do
point.
you
You
say-
could buy an Exolife right now if you
Yeah, I
wanted
would.
to. But you
Because
could.
it's not worth it.
It's commercial to the level where people can just get
I
it.
could buy a Furby.
But you can't get a Sophia.
Right.
Right,
Because Sophia is a completely different thing.
right.
A more advanced thing.
No. We both agree no. I don't.
disagree.
What about Sophia's more advanced?
There's a large, multi-million-dollar company
Mhm.
advancing her software and ability to interact every day because it's a whole part of their publicity.
I bet that bitch can tell me the weather.
Right,
Right.
right.
And other
Can
Alexa-based
we-
functions. I don't give a fuck about fucking Sophia. You could just put an Exolife thing, like the programming on top of something else,
Right.
and just be like, oh, it now can do Siri-based
Roughly.
things. Oh, plus have the EPU.
Right. I
If
could
the
take a
EPU
Furby and throw it into things, and now it's a Furby base.
The EPU plus Sophia would make Sophia better.
Right.
But-
How do you know
but
they're
you
not
can-
doing that right
But you
now?
can just buy the EPU right now.
Why
Like
not?
that's my thing. Like if all three of us have more than enough money individually
this
to
neck.
buy the
Look
technology.
at the neck.
Yes, it looks like that bitch strangles herself every morning. It's just stupid. Like, to me, one is much more of an issue because it could just be in anybody's hands very easily.
And it's not
So
that
it's
big
more
a deal.
abusable. But the
It's more
abuse is still
abusable
a
as a
problem.
thing. This function can be abused. Jonathan, are you down for polynomial?
Wait, hold on a second. So, Winslow's argument currently is the EPU thing, they claim it has emotions. Ooh, whatever. That bitch, they claim she has rights. Ooh, it hasn't been a real issue. And like, it's the thing
It has
where
been
it
a real issue. A
No!
whole bunch of people were like, no.
But her actually having the rights doesn't like, Saudi Arabia says it.
Right.
What has she actually gotten?
Going around,
But she's not a woman.
not having to
She's
follow-
not a woman.
You say that.
Yeah.
They
because
gave
it's
her
true.
citizenship as a woman.
So she had no
That
rights.
doesn't make sense.
Why?
So she has no rights. because
Yeah,
she's-
like if they gave her citizenship
More rights
as a
than
woman.
a Saudi Arabian woman at the time.
So what do you mean by as a woman? Because to me it sounds like they gave her rights
They gave her
as
special-
a citizen.
It sounds like they gave her special
Special
privileges.
rights.
Right.
Yeah. Which would not be the same thing.
No.
Like
It's like when you're an ambassador and you go to another country, you're basically,
Right.
you can't be like, nothing can happen to you.
Right. More rights
But, so she
More
has
than a
rights.
Saudi Arabian woman.
but not
It's like a
labeled as the
special-
same.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a specialty thing.
Right. So this
She's
thing
not
that
a woman,
someone
though.
Okay. So then this thing that someone built that claims itself to be a woman, more rights than Saudi Arabia.
But it's not. If
But
you
it's
put
like
a
that.
wig on the fucking rocking chair, it wouldn't matter.
Why not?
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I think.
Like giving it rights, but it wears makeup doesn't matter. Look, he put a hat on it. Oh shit, it's
I know.
We'll
male.
explain that. Explain that. How's it currently playing the Xbox?
It sucks at it if he's playing it.
No, it's playing Will Horton's unbelievable
You could
career
flip
game.
the controller upside down and just like push the chair, and it would start clicking through the fucking menu.
Hey,
So
What was wrong?
my thing is that the Sophia thing doesn't really matter.
are you just
And
telling
it-
me that I want? Damn.
And that it just doesn't have like the same level of consequences as putting the EPU thing in the hands of
A
just
whole
anybody with
country.
enough money.
The whole country's citizens don't have as much impact as something that isn't widely released.
What do you mean it doesn't have as much?
That's what I'm saying. That's what you're saying.
I thought you were about to say that the citizens don't have as much impact as the robot. I was like, the
It doesn't
robot
have
doesn't
as
do
much
shit.
Impact, doesn't have as much impact as the little like the EPU things that you say.
But you could just put the EPU things in things
What
and
does
then
that have to
mistreat
do
and
with-
torture them.
Okay.
And I think that's wrong.
Mistreat and torture. How do you know you're torturing?
Because
the
it-
graph changed. The
And
graph
It
changed
has emotional responses
Based
to
on a
the
graph.
way it's being treated.
based on a graph.
If someone hooked you up to a thing that detected like when you panicked and shit,
Right.
and then they like tasered you, and then they were like, the graph changed. Look at, it's just a graph. See,
Yeah.
the graph
Agreed.
changed.
Why the fuck do we listen to graphs?
I just think that's weird.
Agreed.
I just don't think Sophia's like a trend. You can have one thing happen and it not be
I
like
don't
it's
think
gonna build
Sophia's
into other
cool.
things.
I actually don't think so.
I gotta think it's.
I too do not feel like Sophia is the cool.
We're all in
I
agreement.
feel like there are more advanced things than Sophia.
Agreed. But
And
not
I would
emo
say,
shape.
I'd say the emo shape thing is more advanced than Sophia.
I disagree.
So Aiden,
Right.
how do you feel if you had done the paper on the EPU thing, and I had a sponsorship from Hanson Robotics,
Right.
and I was like, Sophia, she had a citizenship in our country.
And I'd be like, that seems like it has large scale impacts that the EPU thing doesn't have yet.
I just feel like it doesn't really equate. One feels like a fake controversy. The other feels like a legitimate thing that's a problem.
So when people
Giving
are
a
like,
TV
"Fuck you,"
rights
that's a fake.
doesn't matter.
But if people are upset about it, it's not a fake controversy. It's
Why
a
are they
real
upset?
controversy.
I don't have as much rights as the TV.
Right.
Right. Just keep fighting for your rights.
Right. That's
Right.
what they're doing.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Right.
Cool story. What?
Trying to change that shit.
Why change? That's
Because
just a
it's
distraction.
an effect on the right.
If anything, focusing on the TV at all doesn't really push your thing unless you're using it to help you. Like unless you're like,
That's what
well,
they're
if the TV gets rights, I should also
That's
get
what
rights.
they're doing.
Cool.
It's a large
So-
human rights issue.
If anything, it's helpful then, right?
Yes. That's what I'm trying to say in the whole paper, is that
I don't
you shouldn't take away the robots' rights, you should give the people of Saudi Arabia rights. That's what I say in the paper.
Real.
I still feel like the EPU thing.
But that's a bias that you have based on your working with that company.
So what if I wasn't working with that company and I had the same opinion?
Then I'd be like, that's an interesting opinion, prove it. Show evidence.
I mean the same amount that I've like spoken of mouth
Right.
has like I haven't spoken of stuff that I've worked on specifically. Right. So I don't know. I don't see the difference. You're like, it's interesting show evidence if you didn't work for them.
Of how it's
I
a
do work.
bigger impact on humanity.
That's what I've been describing.
But it's
That it's
not.
commercial and it's gonna continue
Nobody
to
in
expand.
fucking news is like, oh my god, the EPU shit. What the fuck?
But I also feel like the Sophia thing is like, it's just unnecessary.
But if it's 1-0, it's still 1-0. Jonathan, if you're playing basketball, not basketball, because basketball don't have a one. If you're playing soccer and you get 1-0, I guess you could get 1-0. Fuck it. If you're playing soccer and it's 1-0, do you take that or are you like, that's basically the same as losing the game if I'm up 1-0?
What do you mean?
If
He's saying
if
you
a
have
soccer
1
team,
point, but your opponent has no points.
Are you like, that's a win, or are you like, that's basically the same as losing?
He's like, because the Saudi
It's not a
Arabia
fucking
thing.
win.
He's like, because the Saudi Arabia thing caused like a hullabaloo, that it's like a point.
And then
where
emo
EP
shape never did that.
They've like been in news things before.
As big as the entire country of Saudi Arabia. Like international news is like, EPUs, fuck,
I like to go, oh. Also, what time is it?
485,
What's the actual time?
401.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, we both have to dip at some point.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hey,
you have
John.
class at 4:20. Yeah.
Can I print out my thing in your thing?
I'm not having
Oh, you're
any-
printing the speech?
I still haven't got any.
Do you have black?
Dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun.
That's what I was trying, that's what I needed.
You should email Sophia to print your paper.
I'm trying. She's not listening. I'm gonna have to
All you get back is hieroglyphs.
No.
She changed the font to Wing Wings first.
Shit.
Everything she wrote is in paper Latin.
I'd be like, why'd you write over my paper, Sophia? Why'd you write it all?
She'd
wrote
be
it
like,
this way.
Because I'm sentient. No.
Ovale, Igpe, Axonlay, Sophia responds. If I was more fluent in Pig Latin, that would be. Sophia probably would be shitty at Pig Latin. It doesn't matter.
What do you think that? What if she's the best?
Prove it, Hanson Robotics. Challenge.
Who's better at Pig Latin? Random Alabama people or Sophie?
I feel like that'd be a reasonable challenge. They should be able to do that.
I don't know. My grandma fluent as fucking.
Whoa, what? Whoa, what? I didn't hear that.
My grandma can fucking speak Pig Latin. Like, there's
Oh, I thought you said my grandma can speak pig, and I was like,
no Pig Latin.
fuck. What do we do about this?
He didn't even say those words. He was like, my grandma's fluent as fuck in that shit. And you're like, did you say your grandma can speak pig?
That's what I heard.
Fluent as fuck in that shit. Fluent as fuck in that shit. Speaks pig.
Yes,
The mnemonics.
it lines up too well. I had that
The
constructed.
syllable count's not even the same.
I had that constructed interference in my inner earrings.
Error.
Eeyore.
Cannot compute.
Igor.
Eeyore?
Yeah, the little.
He's depressed.
Why don't you say
Like
that?
EPUs can be.
You were about to say who Eeyore is. Please tell me you know who Eeyore is.
Yeah, he's a imaginary friend that kid had, like on the ones that I'm talking about, that were possible.
So,
Eeyore's the fucking elephant
Yeah.
from Winnie the Pooh. My childhood is mad at you right now.
You're sorry,
My childhood is very mad.
Can I give it a hug?
you pull out your wallet. Can I give your imagination a hug and $20? Your imagination's not very good wood.
Seeing as I lost my innocence at a very young age. Probably not. I don't know where the fuck it's at.
It's just gone. It's just wandering somewhere, like.
Yep. It's like, you know what? I'm fucking tired. Nope.
Aiden.
Yes.
Hey, agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Good game.
But remember, so far it's 1-0.
Remember, Sophia ain't shit.
It may be not shit, but it's still 1-0, not shit.
I'm sure I can pull up some emo-shaped news.
That's as big internationally as the Saudi Arabia shit. What if they're like, Hanson Robotics puts emo shape?
Puts whole company.
Just
They
people-
buy it.
People are like getting into Sophia's head. Like, hey.
As you guys can see, Winzlow's square dick. Ooh, they added in a new video on their webpage. Anyways, thank you all for watching. If you like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we do these live streams. This is your friend, your boy, jetblackrlsh.